All right, look, if I told you that there was a way to grow your money tax-free, access it tax-free, and leave a legacy for your family tax-free, I mean, you'd probably be suspecting me to sell you some magic beans or invite you to a timeshare presentation in Boca Raton, Florida, right? Well, surprise, it's not crypto, it's not a Ponzi scheme, and it sure as heck isn't your 401k. It's called Index Universal Life, or IUL for short, and it's what the wealthy have been using here in America for years to build their wealth. So why are people flocking to IULs faster than baby boomers flocking to the Cracker Barrel to check out their new breakfast special on a Sunday morning? Well, there's high interest growth, guaranteed no loss, tax-free distributions, a lifetime of income, a death benefit, and there are also living benefits at no additional cost. And you can become your own bank, and the IRS can't touch a dime of it. Honestly, because they think life insurance is what your uncle with a bad mustache tried to sell you back in 1997. Or maybe you Googled IUL. Next thing you know, you had 14 ads running and 6 different used car salesmen trying to get a hold of you to act now, and you won't believe this special offer. Look, the reason why people don't do this is one, they don't understand how it works. Or even worse, number 2, they let people like Dave Ramsey do their thinking for them. In the next few minutes, I'm going to break down the IUL, who it's for, who the heck should stay away from it, and why the IUL might just be the cheat code for building tax-free wealth here in America. So come on, join me. Let's jump right in. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our very special IUL webinar that we are hosting today. I want to welcome everyone from all across the country, and I hope to have this be a very beneficial session for you. So one of the things I wanted to start off with is just to let everyone know that we are going to be talking about Index Universal Life, or IUL is what they call it. It's kind of the nickname in the biz, so to speak. But before we get into that, I think it's very, very important that we get into understanding some of the issues that the IUL solves. Now, just like if you've been following me for any length of time or have looked at any of my other material, you'll understand that I use the word or words industry disruptors a lot. You know, I'm talking about Amazon, I'm talking about Netflix, I'm talking about Uber and Apple, and those companies that took something that we didn't even really know was inconvenient or broken and just added a lot of benefit to it. And what we're going to be talking about today is the same type of industry disruptor. But before I tell you the equivalent of what Uber does or what Netflix does, I want to address the problem that we have. And so if you will allow me for just a second, we'll get started on this. And what I want to talk about is the retirement piece. And one of the things that is very, very critical for those of us who are in our 20s, 30s, 40s, actually those of us who have not retired, and even there is hope for some who have retired and have not quite been able to utilize this, is that with retirement, there are what I call 3 enemies of retirement wealth building. And that is taxes, risk, and liquidity. And if we cannot understand and get these 3 principles right as it relates to our money and as it relates to us trying to invest and trying to put money away for retirement, this could be crippling. So let's start with the first, which is taxes, everyone's favorite. So I'm going to start by asking this question to you. What is the future of taxes in the United States? And what I mean by that is, are taxes going to be going up, going down, or staying the same? Now, I don't want you to answer out loud right now, but I want you to kind of ponder that and think, what do you think? Well, If you're thinking what most people in America think, you're exactly right. There's a good chance they're not going down. In fact, there's a good chance they're not going to stay the same. In fact, let's take a look at three different things. First of all, the U.S. national debt. Now, at the time of this recording, we are almost at the edge of 37 trillion, but we're still into the $36 trillion of national debt. Now, please keep in mind that when we hear about the national debt, sometimes it's just easy for us not to even think about it, head in the sand. But the reality, folks, is that the national debt is growing over $1 million every 54 seconds. And I want you to think about, how does this get paid? This is a debt that is going to fall on us, our children, our children's children. It needs to be addressed. By the way, that's the national debt. Anyone have any idea what our unfunded liabilities are? In other words, the liabilities that we owe our citizens, Medicare, Social Security, those kind of things. It's over $100 trillion. We are in a world of hurt. And by the way, the only way that the government can operate is to take money from its citizens. So sure, taxes will go up. And let's look at the tax rates. Right now, we're in the lowest marginal tax bracket in the last 50 years. So there is more than a good chance we're going to revisit some of the days of old. And I want to point this last thing at the Congressional Budget Office. It states that if Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid go unchanged, in other words, they pay what they're supposed to pay and what they promised to pay, the lowest tax bracket, the rate for the lowest tax bracket would increase from, today it's 10, would increase to 25% just to cover it. Or if you're at 25% bracket, it would increase to 63% just to cover it, the 100 trillion deficit we have. Or if it was 34.9, that goes to 88. Folks, I think we can just be fair and honest. Taxes are going to go up. So then I asked the question, what strategy should we invest with our mind's eye into retirement as we're looking out over the next 20, 30, 40 years, however long we have? What strategy are we choosing? Because there's three buckets. Well, first we have the taxable bucket. And that money is forever taxed. Well, what do I mean by that? So the IRS taxes three types of income. That's all they can tax. It's earned income, your wages. It's passive income, rental properties, storage sheds, things like that. And then portfolio income, investments or interest that the bank pays you, that whopping 17 cents a year that you have to put onto your taxes. So those are the forever taxed buckets. They'll be taxed every single year. Well, there's also another strategy called the tax deferred strategies, and you guys probably know this a little better as retirement plans offered through work, 401ks, 403bs, 457s, just depends on where you work, what kind of company. And what they say is, well, let's go ahead and defer the taxes. Let's go ahead and not tax you now. We want you to put money away into your retirement, and we'll tax you when it comes out, when you need to take the money. Okay? So that is what we call taxed at distribution. Now, the funny thing is, what they have said, what they have been saying for years is, well, yeah, but it's going to be bigger, but ideally you're going to be in a lower tax bracket because you're not going to be making as much money. That just hasn't happened. And so the reality is, instead of paying taxes on the seed, you pay taxes on the harvest. Instead of paying taxes on the $1,000 a month that you decided to put in to your retirement right now, you're going to pay on the $10,000 that it turns into. Well, if taxes are going up, who's winning there? I can assure you it's not you. And then the third bucket. The third bucket is our tax-free bucket. It's never taxed. And the thing about all three of these that I found, or that I find frankly very, very interesting, is that 95% of all retirement money exists in these first two buckets. They exist in the taxable bucket. savings accounts, money market accounts, mutual funds, stocks, those kind of things, or the tax deferred bucket. Why aren't we looking at the tax-free bucket? Taxes are one of the biggest enemies of retirement and wealth building. But let's look at the second one. Let's look at risk. Because as I'm sure you all know, the market can be very unstable. And in fact, I'm sure that if you think for more than a couple of seconds, you can name about 5 different people, probably even yourself, that has had something in the market, your 401k, your retirement, and over the last few weeks, over the last few months, over the last few years, you have seen it go up and unfortunately go down almost as much as it has went up. Well, let's get some perspective about the market and the market adjustments. And so this here is the last 100 years, and I want to show you how the market actually has functioned, how it's adjusted. Now let's take a look at the first one. This is what we call minor pullbacks. And the minor pullbacks are between 5 and 9% of adjustment. In other words, let's say it was at 4,000, now it's down to 3,900, 3,800, 3,700. It will go up to 9%. And this happens almost every year. Recovery is fairly quick. It takes typically 1 to 2 months. The next one we have is a little bit more, and this happens, by the way, 50% of the time. It lasts, this between 10 and 19%, it lasts 4 to 6 months, and recovery typically takes 4 to 12 months. Folks, this happens every 50% of the time. 50% of the time. Half of the years. It's been 50 years this has happened. And now the biggest one, that this has happened 17% of all of the years, 17 years, there have been what we call bear markets where we have lost 20% plus of your value in the market. Now, this lasts several months to a couple of years. Recovery typically takes 1 to 5 years. I'm not sure how old you are watching this, but if you think back, if you were working and had money in 2008, even just a few years ago during COVID, 2022, or if you had money at the very beginning of the turn of the century, 2000, 2001, 2002, we all went through it. And in fact, there are a lot of people who have not been able to recover yet. I personally know a few people who were scheduled to retire and couldn't retire right before COVID or right after COVID actually started hitting the markets because they lost about 20% of their retirement and couldn't afford. They literally had to cancel their retirement party because he had to work an extra year. So what's the solution? Well, I want to talk to you today about something that many people, most people that I talk to, do not know about, which is called indexing. And this is how, folks, we eliminate market risk. Now, you see, with indexing, it works similar to putting your money into the market. So, for example, the red line is going to represent me having $100,000, and I'm going to go to a broker, maybe Edward Jones, maybe Raymond James, whoever I choose to go to. And I'm going to take that $100,000 and I'm going to put it in the S&P 500, Standards & Poor 500. This is the top 500 companies usually within North America. That's where I'm going to put my money. And I'm going to see how this turns out. Okay? Now, this is a 25-year snapshot, actually about a 24-year snapshot that we see here. This actually started in 1999, so the year 2000, you're seeing your first year, and it stops at 2024. So I've got 100,000 in there. Now, I'm going to compare that to if I were to clone myself and have $100,000, and instead of going to a broker and putting this into the market, I'm going to go to an insurance company and I'm going to put this $100,000 into fixed indexed. I'm going to index my investment. And here's what it means. When you put the money into an index account, there is a floor that when the market goes down, not if, when the market, in fact, if you run all those numbers we just talked about in the last couple of slides, every 3.5 years, there is at least an adjustment that's over 10%. and it takes months to a year to get back. So it will, if there is a floor, it will not go below that. And then on the other side, it has, or most of them have, what we call a cap, which is if the market goes above that number, let's say the market has a stellar 15% return that year, 15% growth, the insurance company will credit you up to the cap, or in this illustration, 12%. So there is a kind of a guarantee right there. There's a guarantee you won't lose money, and there's also a guarantee you won't make over 12%. But that's kind of the sweet spot. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, well, yeah, let me take my chances. Well, let's look historically at what's happened. If you notice, the first year, if we did this in 1999, if we put this directly in the market with the S&P, red is actually, we start a little higher here, okay? And you can see that. And then as you look, the market goes down. In 2000, it takes a nosedive, and it goes from about 100, well, my dollar goes from about 110,000 all the way down to about 90,000, and then it starts to go up again. And you see they're kind of running parallel there up until about 2008. Yeah, that's right. Remember that? Remember that time right there? The housing crash. And so all of a sudden, this dropped, in fact, over 40 points, or right about 40 points is what happened here. You know what, my clients in 2008 who had their money in index funds or an indexing strategy, they weren't sweating it at all. They didn't lose a thing. In fact, if you look, by the time these folks here actually caught up, let's go straight across here and see, it was about 2013 before they caught up to where they were. Take a look in 2013, how much further this went. And as you can see it, good years go up, great. Bad years go down, nope, not them. They'll either go straight across or they go up. And if you take a look, in 25 years, that 100,000 indexed is worth 552,000 versus my 100,000 in the exact same S&P market, folks. In the exact same S&P market represents about $130,000 difference. $130,000 difference off of 415, that's over 25% difference. It's a big deal. And so that is what the options that we have are. That's what we can do to protect. The third enemy of retirement wealth building is, frankly, liquidity. Now, we're going to talk about a couple of different components here really quickly. When you look at how people put their money in a retirement account, 401k, whatever the case it is, if you're a 45-year-old female and wanted to get money out of that retirement account, you're kind of stuck. You have to wait until 59 and a half, or you're going to pay a 10% penalty. When you do get access to the cash, remember what we talked about during the taxes part, you're going to have to pay whatever the tax rate is that year when you pull it out. So you're going to, if you need it before 59 and a half, you're going to pay 10% plus the tax rate. If the tax rate's 30, you'll pay a total of 40%. If you have 100,000 in there, the government gets 40,000 and you get 60,000. Not very liquid. Well, what if you had money in property? Very, very good investment strategies. But how do you get money out of a house? If you own your house or you own the rental that you're renting and you need cash, you have to sell the house. You have to take out a home equity line of credit on the house. You have to do something with paperwork and credit scores and waiting and time. It's not liquid. You don't have access to it. And that is the thing that I love about Index Universal Life, is that it is entirely flexible. See, you're able to get out of Index Universal Life. You have no tax consequence. You get access to your money, if you do it right, you get access to your money tax-free for the rest of your life. Number two, it is risk-free. The money that you put into Index Universal Life is, just like the name says, it's indexed. So therefore it's linked to the market. It is not actually in the market.
And then the third thing is it is 100% liquid. The cash that you have accumulated in your account, you will always be able to get to it. No restrictions, no penalties. And this is why I believe the IUL is one of the most fantastic retirement vehicles around. And there's a couple of other things that I want to share about this too. Let's take a look at some of your common investments in the way that people retire, because I think this speaks volumes. And as you look across the top, you'll notice that we have Index Universal Life. We have our traditional retirements of 401k, 403b, 457s. We also have our Roth IRA, which we'll talk about that. We have our annuities, which is a type of IRA, and then we have our savings or money market or high yield savings accounts. Well, let's take a look at what of these things here, which we would all agree are important. How about high interest growth? Yes, we want our money to grow. How about a guarantee no loss? Well, absolutely. Who wouldn't want that? How about tax-free distributions? Sign me up. If we don't have to pay 30, 40, 50%, or God knows what it's going to be by the time we get out, we know taxes are going to be higher, or else we're living in a bubble. How about lifetime income? How about something that is going to pay me for as long as I'm alive? Oh, we haven't even talked about this, but what about a death benefit? What about what happens when I die and this money goes to my heirs? How does that work? Or how is money in my savings account going to help offer living benefits at no cost? This, friends, is the strength of an IUL. This is the strength of an IUL. Now, if you have done, like I mentioned in my introduction, if you have done any research online, if you have looked at anything online, you will know that you're going to get, just like reviews at a restaurant, you're going to get some of the best reviews and some of the worst reviews by people who don't understand it. And unfortunately, I would say as long as I've been doing this, about 90+% of IULs that are sold today are unfortunately, they're sold wrong. They are sold by insurance agents who do not know what they're doing. They have no idea how to make the policy work for you, because every single IUL policy should be custom designed based on your goals, your personal situation, and how quickly or easily you need the money, for how long. There's so many variables there. And so, okay. I want to show you this because this is going to speak volumes. And let me go ahead and I'm going to move my face here because we'll just put it right there. How's that? Okay. So this is a side-by-side comparison with an IUL versus a 401k. Now, what we did with this comparison is we took a look and said, how much is this person at age 71 when they want to retire? How much do they need to live? And we determined that it was going to be $150,000 that they needed to live. Okay? So I'm going to show you right now. This is the 401k. Now, if you notice, the company here is going to have matched 3%. So they're getting an additional $6,000. And so we realized that in order to get $155,000 a year, this person, starting at age 30, is going to have to put in $21,000 per year. Now they're getting $6,000 from the company, so that leaves $15,000 for themselves, so about $1,250 per month. Okay? So I want you to watch what happens here at 30. And if you take a look at a couple of things, first of all, your account balance is down here where you have the highlighted area. But I also want you to take a look at your annual contributions, yes, but then look at this column here. This is your cumulative taxes deferred. Now keep in mind, I only put this person in a 20% tax bracket. Very, very low, okay? My guess is it's going to be quite a bit higher. But I want you to take a look at this. At age 30, we're going to go ahead and just fast forward through time here. Age 32, 33, 34. Take a look at the account balance. That's growing really nice. In fact, in 6 years, It's got $171,000 in there. Wow, that's pretty good. The one thing I also want to make sure that I point out to everyone is I am taking a very modest 6.45% return every single year, and that's what we're using to compound. Okay, 6.5%. So as we go up, you can see, wow, he has put in quite a bit. We have 336,000 now at age 45 that he's put in, but the balance, because of compound interest, is 467,000. Fantastic. What's this 100,000? Oh, that's taxes that we owe, and we'll worry about that later. We'll just kind of kick that down the road. So we're going to go all the way up, all the way up. Boy, that's looking pretty good right now. He is 63, 4, 5, 6, 7. And when we get to 71, it is time for this person to retire. They have about 1.9 million. They also owe 388,000 in taxes. And if you take a look here, when it comes time to take his money out, do you remember we said 155,000 is what this gentleman needed to retire on every year? Well, the problem is he has to pay $39,000 in taxes to get to 155. So he really needs to take out 194, almost $195,000 a year just to make this work. Well, the problem, and this is what we're starting to see over the last 10, 15 years, is as he keeps withdrawing from his 401k, you'll see that number go down until eventually at 85, he's got a lot more life left at the end of his money. A lot more life left. What do? Folks, why do you think you see people bagging groceries at the grocery store, checking receipts at Walmart? Yes, they're wonderful people, and they make you laugh, and they smile, and they just make it pleasant when you go in and when you leave. But trust me, they don't want to be there if they don't have to be there. Most do not have another alternative. Now, I want to show you our alternative, because when we put that same amount of money, $1,000 every month, as opposed to he had to put more money into this. Well, first, they're putting $6,000 the company's matching. Here, the company's not matching this. You're doing this yourself. And then over here, he has $15,000 because we have to take out about $3,000, $4,000 in taxes. Okay? And I want you to watch what happens at the very beginning. This IUL insurance policy that is set up correctly, the right way for this person. If you look, this just keeps going and going. It's a crock pot type mentality. It's nothing microwavable. This takes a little bit of time. And then let's start at 71. And if you look here, we have put in only 492,000, 12,000 a year for 41 years. Here, there has 861,000 put in. It's almost double the amount of money because of the taxes. Well, we paid our taxes before we put it in here. Okay? So now let's watch a couple of things. First of all, your account balance, because keep in mind your account balance is how an IUL actually credits you your interest every year. You get how your fund performed on the total amount of money you have ever had in there. And so let's just take a quick peek here. At 72, 73, you can see over here, this is going down. Look what's happening to my IUL. My account balance keeps going up and up and up and up. Let's take a look, by the way, at how about the taxes paid? Well, we already paid our taxes up front, but we've counted them in here. We've paid $123,000 for the taxes. This person's already paid $350,000 for the same amount of time. Let's look at the fees. This is based on 2.5%, which, by the way, both Forbes and Time Magazine have been quoted saying it's closer to 4 to 5%. But I use a modest 2.5%. We publish our fees in the contracts. Look at the fees. Sure, that he had almost $2 million, but look at how much has been paid in fees. So as you go 79, 80, 81, 82, 83 to 85, where my 401k or traditional way of investing, I'm out of money, I want you to take a look. I'm still getting $155,000 tax-free. I've already paid my $123,000 one time. My expenses are only $290,000 versus $1.2 million. My cumulative net income is $2.3 million versus 2. And if you look, if I were to die at 85, my heirs would get $1.1 million in death benefit, tax-free to them. And this will last all the way up to 120. Is how we've set this up. Putting in less money than you are in a 401k. I hope this has been helpful. I know that there's been a lot of information here. The whole purpose of us doing this today for all of you folks is I want you to see the power of the IUL. And I want you to see just how well this can work for you and your family and your legacy plan. So if you would like to find out more, if you would like for us to run a custom illustration and scenario for you with your retirement goals to see how this would work, why don't you give us a call, connect with the agent that brought you here to this, and we look forward to speaking with you. Thanks so much, folks. Have a blessed day.